Most people fear aggressive dogs. Dogs that bark. Dogs that growl. Dogs that bite. But history and modern behavioral science tell a very different story. Because the dogs under the most extreme stress are often the quiet ones. The ones who don't react. The ones who don't resist. The ones who seem calm. Tonight, we're going to uncover a hidden pattern. One that has been misunderstood for decades. A pattern where silence is not peace, but a warning. For decades, we've believed we understood dogs. We thought their behavior was obvious. Simple. Easy to read. If a dog barked, we said he was angry. If a dog bit, we labeled him dangerous. And if a dog stayed quiet, still, obedient, compliant, we called him well-behaved. That way of thinking didn't just shape how families treated their pets. It shaped training manuals, animal shelters, even laws deciding which dogs were considered safe and which ones weren't. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Those rules were never built around how dogs actually experience stress. They were built around how humans do. As humans, we tend to externalize stress. When we're overwhelmed, we talk more. We raise our voices. We slam doors. We vent. We release pressure outward, often without even realizing it. So naturally, we assumed dogs worked the same way. A loud dog must be stressed. A reactive dog must be unstable. A silent dog must be calm. But dogs don't live inside the same emotional system we do. Dogs internalize stress. Instead of pushing it outward, they pull it inward. They hold it. They suppress it. They compress it. Think about that for a moment. If stress has nowhere to go, it doesn't disappear. It builds. And history shows us just how deeply that misunderstanding runs. For years, trainers praised dogs who endured discomfort without reacting. Shelters described quiet dogs as easy. Owners were encouraged to reward stillness, tolerance, and silence, especially in situations that made dogs uneasy. A dog who froze during handling was called cooperative. A dog who avoided eye contact was called submissive. A dog who stayed still around strangers was called safe. But what if that silence wasn't comfort? What if it was endurance? Imagine being overwhelmed but knowing that reacting would make things worse. Imagine learning, over time, that showing fear doesn't help. And expressing discomfort changes nothing. So you stop expressing it. That's not calm. That's adaptation. Dogs learned, often unconsciously, that silence was survival. And because humans rewarded that silence, the behavior was reinforced. Not because the dog felt better, but because the system around him felt more comfortable. Here's the question most people never ask. If a dog isn't barking, isn't growling, isn't pulling away, how do we know he's okay? The honest answer is, we often don't. Because when dogs internalize stress, the warning signs don't look dramatic. They look subtle. They look easy to miss. They look like nothing. And when stress keeps compressing, without release, without understanding, without relief, it doesn't fade. It hardens. This is where so many stories begin, not with aggression, but with silence. Not with chaos, but with restraint. Not with a warning, but with years of being misunderstood. And once you understand that, you realize the real danger was never the loud dog. It was the quiet one we assumed was fine. When people talk about fear, they usually describe it in simple terms. Fight, or flight. Stand your ground, or run away. That's how fear is often portrayed in movies, books, and even self-help advice. But biology tells a deeper story. Because in nature, there isn't just two responses to danger. There are three. Fight, flight, and freeze. And freeze is the oldest of them all. Long before animals had strength to fight, or speed to escape, they had one last option when danger appeared: stillness. Not calm. Not peace. Stillness. In the wild, this response first appeared in smaller prey animals. Creatures that didn't have sharp teeth. didn't have powerful jaws, didn't have long legs to outrun predators. For them, fighting meant death. Running meant death. So evolution offered one final strategy. Do nothing. Don't move. Don't draw attention. Don't breathe loudly. Become invisible. And this instinct worked. Predators often hunt movement. Something that doesn't move can disappear into the background. Over thousands of generations, this response became hardwired into the nervous system. Not learned. Not trained. Automatic. That wiring didn't disappear when wolves became dogs. It stayed. The freeze response still activates when a dog feels trapped, overwhelmed, or unsure whether escape is possible. And this is where humans often misunderstand what they're seeing. Because a frozen animal looks calm. The body is still. The mouth is closed. There's no barking. No growling. No obvious resistance. From the outside, it looks like control. But internally, the body is in crisis. Stress hormones spike. Cortisol floods the bloodstream. The heart rate fluctuates, sometimes fast, sometimes unnaturally slow. Muscles tense, ready to react, but held back by instinct. The dog isn't relaxed. He's bracing. Think about that for a moment. Imagine being terrified, but knowing that moving could make things worse. Imagine learning that the safest thing you can do is nothing. That's not calm behavior. That's survival behavior. And here's the most dangerous part of the freeze response. Because it's quiet, it's often rewarded. Humans see stillness and assume cooperation. They continue the interaction. They push closer. They ignore the subtle signs. The dog learns something critical in that moment. Silence works. Movement doesn't. So the freeze response becomes stronger. But the stress doesn't go away. It accumulates. And the body can only hold that level of tension for so long. This is why some of the most shocking incidents seem to come out of nowhere. A dog that never barked. Never growled. Never showed aggression until suddenly, he did. The explosion wasn't random. It was delayed. Because silence wasn't peace. It was pressure. In nature, freeze is meant to be temporary. A pause before safety returns. But in modern life, dogs are often forced to freeze again and again, without release. Handled. Crowded. Ignored. And over time, silence becomes survival. Not because the dog feels safe, but because he doesn't see another option. Understanding this changes everything. It teaches us that the absence of noise is not proof of comfort. And the quietest dogs may be carrying the heaviest load. If you ask most dog owners how they know their dog is stressed, you'll hear the same answers. He barks. He growls. He snaps. We've been taught to look for noise. For drama. For obvious resistance. But the truth is, the most important warning signs rarely look alarming at all. In fact, most owners never notice them. Not because they don't care, but because these signals don't match what we expect fear to look like. Let's start with one of the most common. Repeated lip licking. Not after eating. Not when food is present. But slow, deliberate licking when nothing is happening. That's not hunger. That's tension. It's a dog trying to self-soothe. The same way humans might clench their jaw or take a deep breath under pressure. Then there's head turning. A dog gently turning his head away from you, not leaving. Not pulling back, just redirecting his gaze. Most people see that and think, he's being calm. Or worse, he's ignoring me. But what that dog is really saying is, I'm uncomfortable, and I don't want this to escalate. Dogs avoid direct confrontation whenever possible. Turning away is a peaceful signal, an attempt to de-escalate without causing conflict. Another sign almost everyone misses is slow, controlled breathing. At first glance, it looks relaxed. But when the breath feels measured, almost forced, unnatural for the situation, that's not calm. That's regulation. The body is working hard to stay under control. Then there's eye contact, or the lack of it. A dog who avoids eye contact while staying physically close isn't relaxed. He's conflicted. He wants safety. But he also wants space. That push and pull is one of the clearest signs of internal stress, and one of the easiest to overlook. And finally, there's body stiffness. No growling. No snapping. No obvious resistance. Just a rigid posture. A frozen tail. Muscles tight beneath the surface. From the outside, it looks like obedience. But it's not calm. These are not signs of comfort. They are signs of restraint. They're signals from a nervous system working overtime to hold everything together. And here's where things become unsettling. When researchers and behavior specialists look back at serious dog incidents, cases often described as sudden, or out of nowhere, a pattern keeps appearing. Many of these dogs had no history of aggression. No prior bites. No warnings that humans recognized as dangerous. But what they did have was a long history of unusual silence. They tolerated uncomfortable handling. They endured crowded environments. They stayed still when stressed. The warning signs were there. They were just misunderstood. Because we taught ourselves to listen for noise instead of tension. To watch for explosions instead of pressure building. So when something finally happened, it felt random. But it wasn't. It was delayed. Think about that. How many times have we praised a dog for putting up with it?
Embrace diversity.
How often have we
Practice
said,
tolerance.
he's fine, he's not doing anything? Sometimes, not doing anything is the loudest signal a dog can send. The tragedy isn't that dogs don't warn us. It's that they warn us quietly, and we never learned how to listen. And once you start seeing these signs, you can't unsee them. Because stress doesn't announce itself with chaos. It whispers first. And if we ignore the whisper long enough, eventually, it doesn't whisper anymore. Most people who love dogs would never intentionally hurt them. They buy the best food. They take them on walks. They give them a home. And yet, many of the most serious problems don't come from cruelty. They come from misunderstanding. Because some of the most common things we praise in dogs are actually signs that they're struggling. Take the word, good. We say it all the time. He's such a good dog. She's so patient. He lets anyone touch him. What we often mean is, the dog doesn't react. He doesn't complain. He doesn't resist. He doesn't make things uncomfortable for us. But here's the hard truth. A dog being quiet doesn't mean a dog is okay. In many cases, it means the dog has learned that resistance doesn't help. One of the most common mistakes humans make is praising dogs for tolerating things they don't enjoy. Being hugged tightly. Being handled by strangers. Being cornered by children. Being placed in crowded, noisy environments. When a dog freezes through these moments, we reward him. We smile. We pet him. We say, see, he's fine. But inside, the dog is already doing everything he can. He's controlling his breathing. He's holding his muscles tense. He's suppressing every instinct telling him to move away. And when we push past those signals, because nothing bad is happening, we unintentionally teach the dog something dangerous. We teach him that his discomfort doesn't matter. Another mistake is forcing contact in the name of socialization. We tell ourselves, he needs to get used to it. We can't let him be afraid. If he stays still, it means he's learning. But learning doesn't happen under pressure. It happens under safety. When a dog is forced to endure something he's not ready for, he's not building confidence. He's building tolerance. And tolerance has a limit. Then there's the most subtle mistake of all, ignoring the small signals. The head turn. The lip lick. The stiff posture. We brush them off because they don't look dramatic. He's not growling. He's not snapping. He's not doing anything. But that's the point. The dog is already doing everything he can to keep the situation from escalating. This is where one sentence changes how we see everything. Silence is not consent. Silence is often endurance. Dogs don't have language the way we do. They don't file complaints. They don't explain boundaries. They communicate through behavior. And when those behaviors are ignored, minimized, or praised for the wrong reasons. Pressure builds. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. Slowly. Quietly. Until one day, the dog reaches a moment where endurance is no longer possible. And when that happens, people say the same thing every time. He snapped out of nowhere. There were no warning signs. He was always so good. But the truth is harder to face. The warning signs were there. They just didn't look like what we expected. Understanding this doesn't mean blaming ourselves. It means learning to see dogs differently. Not as creatures that should tolerate everything quietly, but as living beings with limits, thresholds, and emotions of their own. Because the goal isn't to raise dogs who endure. It's to raise dogs who feel safe enough to say, in their own way, this is too much. And when we learn to listen to that, we prevent the moment when silence finally breaks. By the time a dog explodes, he has already been silent for a very long time. That moment, the bite, the snap, the sudden reaction we call unexpected, isn't the beginning of the story. It's the last page. Everything before it happened quietly. Out of sight. Misread. We focus on the moment things go wrong because it's dramatic. Because it's visible. Because it demands an explanation. But what we call bad behavior is rarely the cause of the problem. It's the result. It's the visible end of an invisible struggle that has been building for weeks, months, sometimes even years. And this is where our perspective has to change. Aggression isn't the mystery. Silence is. Silence is harder to notice. It doesn't interrupt us. It doesn't make noise. It doesn't ask for attention. A quiet dog fits easily into our lives. He doesn't complain. He doesn't challenge us. He doesn't force us to slow down. So we assume he's fine. But silence can mean restraint. It can mean endurance. It can mean a nervous system working overtime to hold everything together. Think about how often we reward dogs for putting up with things. How often we say, he's good, he didn't react. How often we ignore the subtle signs because nothing went wrong yet. The truth is, dogs are always communicating. Not with words. Not with explanations. But with small signals, head turns, stillness, tension, breath. When we miss those signals, we don't just misunderstand our dogs. We miss our chance to protect them, and ourselves. If we truly want to prevent tragedy, we don't need louder warnings. We don't need harsher training. We don't need to wait for something to go wrong before we pay attention. We need to learn how to listen sooner. To the quiet moments. To the pauses. To what looks like nothing at all. Because sometimes, the most important warning a dog will ever give is the one he gives without a sound. And once you learn to hear that silence, you don't just understand dogs better. You change the ending of the story.